Guys, welcome back. So today we have a video that I was very excited at the prospect of kind of showing you and presenting to you guys. And we're talking a little bit more about club design.
Yeah.
We haven't done too much of that stuff. We've done, obviously, elements of design, elements of, when we're reviewing clubs, we talk about the nuances of different clubs, but we haven't really delved into the scientific elements too deep.
It's probably true. So there's been obviously some specific discussion about this Callaway Epic Flash, how much this weight is affecting things like the CG location, and how is that going to change your ball flight and such. So I think a lot of the time why people come to this channel is to get sort of the facts of it.
Yeah.
And you had a really interesting idea to visit another facility where they have, what's it called, the CG mapping?
Well, yeah, we basically went through a process where we were identifying the CG location on the head on sort of multiple variations. So whether the weight's in the toe, the weight's in the heel, what does that change?
Right.
So I think there was a couple of videos apparently last week went out on a couple of different channels of people discussing whether these things actually mean anything. What do they mean? So digging into that a little bit. So obviously a sliding weight is a variable thing, right? So we can have it toe, heel, center, somewhere in between. I think in one of the videos that Mark Crossfield had put out there, he talked about, well, if the slider is variable and bulge and roll on the face, so bulge being toe to heel, roll being top to bottom, if that is static, then how do the two marry up? And surely if you have an adjustable one, you need an adjustable other.
Yes.
Right? So, for me, all good, all good information and different stuff, but when we were fielding comments on our channel about it, I had to obviously go back and watch the video, and when I saw some of the stuff Mark was saying on it, he's right about most of it, but what I kind of almost felt was he would maybe leave a lot of question marks in people's minds about what does that mean for them.
Yeah, I think it's just something that needs to be physically quantified to actually make sense. Yeah. So the conversation of, okay, I've moved this way to the toe is now the sweet spot way in the toe, and now the bulge and roll doesn't really work properly because at that part of the face it's curved this way.
Right.
So why this whole process that you'll see right now, Ian using the machine to get those exact specs of where the CG locations are, what that kind of opened your eyes to is the degree to which, in millimeters, it actually was physically moving the CG.
Yeah.
So that's the part of it I think people are thinking, oh, you move it to the toe, CG's way out here now. And if it's in the heel, it's way over here. It's not the case.
It's not the case, guys. No. It's not the case. And Mark did, I was saying to Matt, when I watched it, I think Mark's take on the end of it was, this technology's not doing an awful lot. Okay. Was basically what he was saying. And in a sense, he's right, and in a sense, I do disagree a little bit on it, because there's always value to these things in some way, shape, or form. And then we see it all the time. If we give you, Matty, a driver that's particularly draw biased, you see two things happen. You see increased rotation and you see an unstable club face, because when you strike it on the toe and we have the weight in the heel, so we are relocating by whatever amount you want to discuss. We are relocating that heel, the weight heel side. You then are destabilizing the toe, so that the ball will gear more, right? So the ball will actually kind of twist more, so inward, which is going to create a hook.
So that's basically done to, as most people probably hit it lower in the heel as a general strike location. They've done that to sort of bias the club towards a heel strike. Is that what you're saying?
Basically what the nuts and bolts of this was, this is a very stable driver in the heel, low in the heel, which is kind of, for a lot of drivers, a bit of a weak spot for a lot of people. So, the ball would generally tend to cut and spin and be slow and that sort of thing. So, the element of hitting it in the toe generally tends to lower spin, increased draw spin. Right. Those things make the ball go a bit further. So there's maybe an element of relocating that CG low and heel to try and stabilize and quicken up a slower part of the head. There's maybe an element of that in it. But The other part of this as well, Matt, is kind of, like we know when it comes to the bulge, which is the toe to heel element of the curvature of the face, we know the face is not flat. I mean, if you just want to take, a credit card and hold it against your driver face, you will see space at the top, bottom, and then flip it toe heel, you'll see space either side of that. So you will see the curvature that goes with that. Guys, what I wanted you guys to know is why that is the case. So bulge and roll, the effect of that is for offsetting the start line of the golf ball
based
in
on
order
a strike.
Yes, in order to deal with the spin that's about to happen due to the strike.
Right.
So if we take that toe strike, for example, so if the middle is at 0 degrees, so square.
Yep.
This is open, this is closed. So we know that we know the ball is going to draw from a toe strike.
Yes.
Well, you then have to start that ball more to the right in order to allow for that draw.
Right.
Okay. And the heel points out to the left.
Yep.
That ball will start left to allow for the amount that ball is going to cut back.
So sending it that way, sending it this way.
There you go.
That's basically the point of it.
That's bulge and roll. Okay,
Gotcha.
so it's offsetting start line to deal with what is about to happen with the subsequent gear effect. So we wanted to definitely cover that is why that's the case.
For sure. So back to the question of, is moving a weight like this detrimental to the way that bulge and roll is fixed, obviously?
Yes.
Are we moving it so much that now you've put the sweet spot in a place where the face is curved?
Yeah.
And based on the measurements, we'll show a very good close-up of this. What were we talking? Millimeters?
Millimeters.
Yeah. So
very small increments.
These markings indicate where it started and then where it moved based on, we're talking literally millimeters on the measurements.
Tiny amounts. So realistically, the face angle change within the space of one extreme to the other is not going to make a difference to the golfer.
So needless to say, this is not so much intended to move a CG location as it is to influence the way the club rotates.
It's more of a rotational element than it is about stabilizing one end of the driver versus the other.
And I think that makes total sense. Now that it's been quantified and you can see that it's not like you're moving this X across the face, but you are changing by putting in the heel the fact that it will rotate more, you'll close the face more, and you'll hit more of a draw.
And the sweet spot changes, the sweet spot. The stable spot, the most stable point on the driver, will change relative to face to path relationship as well.
Okay.
Right. So the most stable point isn't the same for all golfers based on all deliveries.
That's interesting.
So from a fitting perspective, guys, this is so important for us to know these things. So if we have a golfer whose their strike tends to locate itself low in the heel. We know that there are certain products that perform better than others, and that type of thing. So you've got a company like TaylorMade, you've got a company like Callaway that have movable weights. You've got Titleist and you've got Ping, who up until this point, we have to say, we don't want to kind of let the bird out the cage with a Ping one, but up until this point, TS and G400 do not have movable weights.
Certainly not in this kind of configuration.
Not in the same way. So why? And this might be an element of why, because relocating CG, it doesn't quite work in the sense that people, I think, assume that it's going to.
Yeah, I don't think there could be a better visual than to see the subtle differences. And when you actually test the club, and we've already seen it with Alan and myself, moving it to the toe made a huge difference in the amount of draw you would get.
It does.
So it works,
absolutely
but it doesn't work the way that people are assuming it works.
Right.
Okay. One thing quickly before we hit a couple to illustrate that, I thought this was really cool. So this is the Sub-Zero version in my hand. And this, my right hand, and this is the regular version.
Yeah,
this
depth of the CG is interesting, isn't
so
it?
the vertical lines you've drawn on here using that machine, obviously we know that the CG is more forward with the Sub-Zero. It's cool to see how much that is. So the line is kind of through the C there, and it's more through the P on the standard version. Right. And that's, you could say that's at least 10, 15 millimeters
Quite
difference.
a lot, isn't it?
And that explains why this launches lower, spins less, and things like that. So I think that, honestly, that system is really cool. Definitely plan to sort of look at it down at the show.
We are. We've got some time spent with the guys at Golf Mechanics where we're gonna work on having our own little science
think
lab for this type of thing. Just again, more education for you guys, more power towards your buying decisions. You'll get better choices, you'll play better golf. That's what this whole thing is about.
Totally.
To help you guys try and understand the nuances of club design, which we have to factor into every decision we make when we hand one of you a driver. We have to try to understand that club to the best of our ability.
I think it's so good to have the ability to do that, because you give someone 2 drivers, their swing is going to vary no matter what you do. They can't swing it the same. But if you can quantify the new M5 has a 10 millimeter more forward CG than Epic Flash, you can make a much better recommendation to someone, because you know what it should do before you test it.
Yeah, no, it was fun to do it, and our big shout out to the guys at the Golf Lab for
nearby us,
for having us up to do that. Carson and Johnny were great, so I really do appreciate them having us up. I reached out to Liam, who owns the Golf Lab, last week, and he was absolutely open, which is
we greatly appreciate
great.
that.
We really do appreciate it.
So, do you want to hit a couple shots?
Yeah,
that we're going to explore how it sort of performs in the toe.
Let's look at that, because it's funny. I had a good player in last week. We were doing some testing with him, so obviously being able to track strike location on quad, he was hitting the ball very centered. I mean, it was incredibly centered, but was often hitting it a bit hooky.
Interesting.
So he was asking me, why, when my face to path is very, very neutral, actually at times slightly open to the path, and a centre strike, am I getting a hook?
Wow.
And that's where you have to try to delve into the nuances of CG and stable points within the golf club. So for him, no question on the driver he was playing, he was still hitting it toe side of the CG of that golf club, which is making the ball gear a little bit, which is where he was getting a fraction hooky.
So theoretically, if we start mapping other drivers and we see one where this X is more here, I know that may not actually end up being the case, but we'll find out. That theoretically would be a great driver for him.
Exactly, that's
it. Would stabilize it for him, and for me as well, because
question.
that's my tendency too.
And if that's that's to the point now, like your eyes lit up when we started talking earlier about being able to sort of move that CG a little bit. I think one of the things we found very interesting, the Callaway sleeve is one of the most adjustable in the market. The 2 cogs that work independently have tons and tons of adjustment. The downside to that is the weight that it takes to have those independent cogs with the sleeve, and quite a large screw in there. So we actually found that the weight of the connector was almost double what some of the other companies were. So again, discretionary weight, which we talk about with golf club engineers, you want as much of that as you can. That was one thing that was interesting. When we were discussing yesterday as a group why we think that CG was so heel side. That's a big reason.
Makes a lot of sense, because if there's so much weight here in the hosel, and it's going to pull it towards that direction. Okay. Well, let's hit a couple. I'm sure that will be a factor for me, because I do tend to overdraw the ball, right?
Yeah.
So interesting start, because I actually hit that in the heel. And it did not feel like it twisted much in my hands whatsoever.
Okay.
Maybe not.
So that's very close.
Yeah, it's kind of like where the X was, wasn't it?
Very close. Okay.
Be interested to see where that strike is. It's a little tough to perceive. Yeah, it was a pretty good hit. A little bit toe side.
How'd you hit that one, Matty?
It felt a little kind of, it felt like that.
Low middle?
So it's funny, the first and third, to me, were a little more low and heely than I'm used to, and actually consequently felt quite solid.
Okay. And one thing I want to do to this, to the point about, where obviously the focus here is a little bit of education on, centers of gravity and what that does, what it means, and the movement of the club when you hit it off center, which is almost always.
Yeah.
we want to actually change the weight to the opposite side and start dealing with the rotational properties, which is probably a fair bit more of what this driver is actually going to see a change with. So we're not, like we said, it's not going to really stabilize anymore or any less. It probably is just going to rotate slightly more or slightly less.
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, so let's hit a few more.
I'm not going to try to hit one in the toe, but that's kind of what we're looking to see, I guess, how that performs.
Well, yeah,
right?
we want to see one that's struck fairly centered, that basically
That
draws
draws
it. That would kind of validate what we found.
Okay.
That's even better, that one. Look at that thing.
It's good, eh?
Striking this really well. Really well.
I'm not helping out, am I?
Yeah, you're definitely hitting it slightly toe side. And the other part about striking it toe side, Matt, is the deflection. So you've got curvature to offset start line, and you've got a bit of deflection, which obviously occurs. So that kind of helps out in deflecting the ball in the opposite direction of the gearing,
Right.
which is going to be inward
Gotcha.
drawn for you. Okay, guys, Matty, good job hitting that nicely today. Really nicely.
It's feeling kind
It's
of
a good
better every
driver
time
for
I
you,
try
that.
it. Yeah.
It's good drive. Adding some loft and then offsetting sort of the settings a little bit. And what we were talking about earlier, you know, these things we talk about with, you know, the static elements. You know, once you put the golf club in motion, a lot of that is variable anyway.
For sure, yeah. You control what you can control variable-wise.
For sure.
So we had the standard Epic Flash 10.5.
Yeah.
You put it in the open setting.
Yeah.
And then obviously toe side with the weight.
Toe as much as we can. And there was an interesting thing about the track, guys, that you know, I haven't heard too many channels sort of mention, but the shaping of the track. The track goes deeper into the heel than it does into the toe. So it would appear that there is some element of these drivers being, you know, there is more mass located heel side to what we found when we actually mapped it on the analyzer. So
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
So let's chat about these numbers to start with.
Well, you gave us your customary marginal toe strike, which is fine.
Yeah.
So we're kind of dealing with a few things. The head is starting a little, we have it slightly open. We're at 2 degrees open on the setup. We have a slight toe strike, so the face is actually pointing a little left and open for you at the point of impact consistently. So all those things were kind of offsetting the start line. So if we go over here to the ball data, you can see that start line sort of go down the left side, and it does come back. It's not, you know, it's not perfectly stable to the point where it's ideal in that it moves left and finishes on line.
I would agree with that.
It crosses ever so slightly.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen some slightly smaller dispersion circles from you in the past, but even though you were hitting that great today. So, you know, to the CG point, some interesting, numbers.
Compared to what I thought when you first showed me this, and I thought about the first time I hit this and how many hooks I hit with it, I thought, okay, this is starting to make sense to me. Right. So when we just set up now, I kind of expected, to be honest with you, to kind of catch them a bit in the toe and really snipe them, and that wasn't the case. The ones that caused the dispersion circle to be right were actually quite high, nice shots that just, I think it was just me getting the face close. Right. So yes, this looks extreme, but what my question for you was, did you offset the fact that the CG is a little more heel side by putting a proper amount of loft in my hand? One, because the lower loft's just not functional for my swing, and the bigger CG head, not the Sub-Zero head. For
sure. I mean, so to that point, you mentioned earlier on where you saw the biggest variance, which was with the CG forward and back, between Sub-Zero and Standard. Obviously, we know the further back we move CG, you know, the more stable the head becomes. Guys, I hope this wasn't too meaty, too heavy in information. You know, the techies, you know, will probably watch it a couple of times just to go back in and kind of catch some of the details and nuggets. But you know, it's just all about the nuances, the information we can have to do a better job for you guys, and hopefully help you guys understand when you're making your own decisions, or when you're with a club fitter. I get a lot of that. You know, I'm going for a club fitting with X company. You know, what should I be aware of? You know, this is something, you know, if from a strike point perspective, you are straying too far from, you know, the most stable point of your driver, that's sometimes why you can have a fit and you maybe don't see your natural results, Matty, because maybe on that day you're striking it in a point where you don't normally strike it, and it destabilizes your ball flight.
Doesn't match up
to the point where you actually can be swinging and delivering it pretty similar from a path, angle of attack standpoint, face angle maybe roughly in the right spot, but if the strike point isn't relevant to what you normally do, you're going to get a different set of results. So,
that's very true.
Guys, sometimes that can be one of the major variables that we deal with. I say to people all the time, like, give me solid contact, I'll give you anything you want.
True, yeah.
I can pretty much make the ball do, within reason, most things, if you can give me solid contact in the middle of the club consistently. That's what we all deal with. That's the challenge of the game.
True. Very cool. Tons more to come on this, so if it was a little confusing for anyone, well, I think, needless to say, this is not the last time you'll see the CG mapping concept on the channel. That's for sure. No, this is the start of something pretty cool. Awesome.
Excellent. Guys, thanks so much for watching. See you soon.